Ever wanted to know about undergraduate and postgraduate medicine admissions in Singapore?
In this video, we're going to dive into who should apply, what are the admission requirements, and what it takes to eventually get into medical school.
Okay, Isaac, let's dive right in.
So let's start off chronologically in age, okay, with undergraduate, a time that is very long away for both of us, but thankfully not that long. So Faith, let's start with the thing that all Singaporeans want to ask, which is what grades does NUS Medicine actually require?
Okay, so some brief background about me. I graduated from NUS Medicine in 2021. So that's one of the two undergraduate medicine schools in Singapore, one being National University of Singapore, NUS, and NTU, Nanyang Technological University's Lee Kong Chian School of Medicine. So I joined right after A-levels, and now I work as a locum GP and a blogger. So what grades NUS Medicine actually requires? Things have changed a little bit, but not too much since the time that I applied, which was in 2016. So back then, it was the UAS, the university admission score, was calculated upon 90, but now they've changed it as of 2026 to be out of 70. It basically counts, I think, 3 H2 content-based subjects and general paper, versus last time when it was 4 H2s and 1 H1. But in general, the indicative grade profile for the 90th and 10th percentile for NUS Medicine is still AAA and A. So it hasn't changed much in that you still need pretty good grades to get in. But that's not to say that you can't get in if, like, maybe you have 1 or 2 Bs. So I will confess that I actually did not get straight As. I got a B in H2 chemistry and a B in project work. But okay, project work no longer counted from the 2026 cohort onwards, which is a good thing. But I managed to make it to the cutoff because I did higher mother tongue at A-levels, so that bumped my university admission score up by a little bit, which I suspect was just enough to, make it to the interview round. Yeah. But grades wise, even if you don't have straight A's, I would definitely recommend applying by like the EBAS route, which is a performance, it sees your portfolio, it sees how well you've done in other aspects like leadership, competitions, maybe research publications, volunteering, just anything to showcase your personality as a whole, like who you are outside just your grades. So once you get in by either grades or the EBAS, which is the special admissions route, it actually doesn't matter because at the interview stage the slate is wiped clean. Yeah.
Great. And a lot of people might not be from the A-level route as well. So we have IB students, polytechnic students potentially with international qualifications. What do you think of their chances?
So in my cohort, a vast majority were from either junior college, IB, and polytechnic routes. So I will comment on those. So for the IB folks, it's pretty much the same as the A-level folks. They all scored rather high, and a lot came in with perfect scores. But if you are an IB student who's submitting your application like a bit before your actual results come out, like just based on the predicted results, then you might need to also present your UCAT and SATs results, which are some additional standardized tests that you can also take just for fun, but you don't have to. And then for polytechnic students, I think it's based on GPA and like your portfolio and which course you came from. A lot seem to have come from biomedical sciences, I think. Yeah, that was where the vast majority of the poly students in my batch came from. I think maybe up to like 5 to 10% of the population might have been from poly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty encouraging statistic as well because I'm not going to say back in our day, but a while ago, there was a stereotype going around that it's very difficult for you to get in via polytechnic, but it seems to be changing increasingly, and a lot of the students and a lot of the people I've seen, juniors, seem to have come from the polytechnic route, and many times, if anything, they're very, very competitive because they go through a biomed diploma. A lot of them are aiming for medicine from the start. And that sort of a course, as well as the opportunities that come with it, give them a lot of chances to create these very, very exceptional portfolios. So if you're a polytechnic student and thinking about medicine, don't count it out at all. But back to the exams idea, you know, I heard the A, right? So
yes, straight A's.
you also mentioned additional tests, and doctors are stereotyped to be studying a lot. So do you need a supplementary test like the UCAT, like SETs, things like that? Where do these stand?
Overall, so if you're applying by JC, Polytechnic, NUS High, and the IB route, once you've gotten your final results, like after the exams are over, you don't need your UCAT and you don't need SETs, thankfully. But if you're submitting predicted IB results instead of the actual grades, or if you're an international student with other qualifications that are not among those what's listed on the NUS website, then you definitely should check whether you need to submit these extra tests.
Yeah, and I think it's also you realize that a lot of them will apply to multiple medical schools at once.
Yeah.
Never keep all your eggs in one basket. And in the process, you would also find that there are many other medical schools that do need the UCAT. So if you do have a UCAT score on hand, am I correct to say that it can be beneficial if you have a strong score?
I mean, there's no harm submitting. We never know exactly what goes on behind the scenes, so the more things you have to put on your portfolio, the better.
And ultimately, there's the big question of how competitive is NUS Medicine?
Honestly, it's fairly competitive, with around maybe a 10% acceptance rate. So in my batch, I heard there were approximately maybe 3,000 people who applied, and then maybe about 1,002 got into the interview rounds, and then from there it was slashed to about 300. So currently NUS has downsized the batch a little bit to about 280, 286 spots. So I assume with a 10% acceptance rate, it's still as competitive as ever.
Wow, that's a pretty low statistic. So I think if I was an A-level student, there's no way I'd be making it in, but
yeah. Okay, so
enough talk about grades and all that. So this is the big meaty part, the portfolio and what you actually need to do to stand out. So what does the NUS medical application consist of?
So based on my memory and also what's on the NUS website currently, there was a personal statement. So it's just about 500 words. So it's not long but not short. So you've got to let them know about yourself, what you've done, why you want to do medicine, and like what relevant maybe job shadowing or clinic work, clinic adjacent work that you've done over the years, and why you stand out more than your other applicants. You've got to sell yourself in some way within 500 words, and also submit a list of achievements. So it's about like 10 achievements over the past 3 to 4 years. So it's fairly recent, so you don't have to list your primary school or early secondary achievements. They want stuff that's recent and higher impact. And of course, the official testimonial that's typically submitted by your school teacher, your form teacher from JC or wherever, and 2 referee reports. The 2 referee reports can be written by teachers or anyone you feel can, write a good testimony about you who knows you fairly well. So for example, if you've done research with like a medical doctor, you can also ask them to write it for you, which is what I did for mine in my portfolio.
So the big question is always, must I do shadowing? And if I do, how many must I do?
Well, I would not say that it's mandatory, but I mean, even from, just picking a career standpoint, it's good to do a job shadowing if you're able to secure one, just so that you can get a feel of what your future might look like. I would recommend getting one shadowing in a GP clinic and another in the hospital. So in my year, I think there was an NUH job shadowing program where like I think at least half my JC class applied and we went to NUH, and I was shadowing a rheumatology professor for 3 days in his clinic. So I got to see what outpatient work looked like, and he shared a bit of insights about, med school training process in his time, which was 30 plus years ago. And he told us, oh, the hours are long, and the job will be tough, but it's rewarding. So I remember we had like lunch at 2 p.m. because his clinic dragged, and even back then I was still delusional and had my rose tinted glasses on. I was like, yes, I see this and I want to commit to it. Yeah. And I also did a GP clinic shadowing. Yeah. And seeing that made me think that, okay, yeah, I can actually see myself doing this day to day work in the long term. And I also did some hospital shadowings as well, like in the wards. I think I did an internal medicine department ward round, and I was like, okay, maybe not, but we'll get through it. So while it's not compulsory and it's not listed as a definite requirement, I think having that clinical experience or maybe working as a clinic assistant in a, I don't know, a GP clinic or a dental clinic, it puts you a bit closer to healthcare and helping understand, and that adds to the depth of what you're able to provide during the interview round when they ask you like, how are you so sure you want to be a doctor? Like, what have you tried? But it's not to say that you're at a complete disadvantage if you don't have any job shadowing opportunities at all. Yeah, I mean, volunteering or just showing that you've got a heart for the community also still counts.
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of interesting clinical exposure opportunities from other people as well. One of my good friends worked as a phlebotomist in a private hospital for a period, and then you have people who volunteer at various care settings. NKF volunteering was something that a student of mine did before. I think I don't even know what really goes on in a dialysis center.
Me neither.
Until something goes wrong. So I think those are really valuable, really valuable experiences, right?
Yeah.
And then what I'll ask you is, many students are wondering, my friend is also going for shadowing, my other friend is doing lots of volunteering. How do I stand out if out of 10 of us, only one of us is going to get in?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, medicine is competitive, and the people you're competing with are most likely your classmates and your friends. So it's not so much about the number of job shadowings or how much experience you have or how much you can, wayang on paper. It's also about how well you pitch it concisely within that 500 word personal statement. Because I mean, that's all they have to go by, in the first round, in the selection round. So you need to be able to fine tune, pick the keywords, come up with, a deeper insight, or tie it together to your life story and your motivation about why you want to join medicine. And I mean, same for when you get to the interview round. If they ask you why you want to be a doctor, if you just say, because I went for like 10 job shadowings, you're not going to get in. But whereas if you just did some volunteer work or you've got a heart for the community, then if you can pitch it in a stronger way, then, your odds are probably still better.
Do you happen to remember any tidbits from your application about how you perhaps strung together some of the things that you did, be it your academic experience, research experience, or your clinical work? Was there any part of that narrative that you can share?
Okay, it's been like 10 years since I applied. In 2016, we are old. But I definitely remember writing about my community service projects that I did because I was in Interact Club, which was one of the volunteering-based CCAs in JC. So I wrote that I helmed some leadership projects in there. I did some like job shadowing in GP clinics and hospitals and what I learned from that and how it confirmed that I really wanted to become a doctor and that I could actually see myself doing this job. I shared briefly about some personality traits that I felt were essential to, being a good doctor or at least being a resilient and committed medical student. And then I also just threw in a bit of a hobby, like just one or two lines I think about, I taught myself how to play guitar to show that, I'm an independent learner. Yeah, so it's all about teasing out traits from your own life that, can stand out and make yourself a bit more unique compared to the other applicants.
Okay. And when all this is said and done, how does the portfolio and other components like the interview weigh up against the first bit, which is the grades?
Okay, so I am don't quote me on this, but I think the first cut is really just based on the grades. So if your grades are really not, anywhere close to the indicative grade profile, they probably won't review your application as strongly already. So once you are, maybe in the top 1,200, the top one third, then they will consider you for the interview round. Yeah.
And let's go into the next part, which I think intimidates a lot of people, the interview, having to sit there and be grilled, right? So walk me through your NUS medicine interview day and what were they asking you in those rooms or that room?
Okay, so I think it's pretty different for undergrad and postgrad. So for undergrad, we have a focus skills assessment, which is basically like a bunch of stations that we have to go through. So we were grouped into like maybe, I think, 5 or 6 people in one group, and then we rotated through a bunch of stations over about 1.5 hours, with each station lasting about maybe under 10 minutes with some rest time in between. So there was like a group component where we had, to complete a task. I remember we were ushered into a room and given a whole bunch of straws and one roll of masking tape. They said, build the tallest tower of straws possible. And then they didn't give us any instructions. There were just, I think, one or two examiners off to the side with a clipboard just watching us. So it's not so much about how you build the tallest tower. I mean, of course, if you do build something great, then it means that, you know, you've got teamwork and competency. But what those kind of stations are trying to test is also like who steps up to be the leader, how you guys communicate in a brand new team. Because I mean, in medicine, you get rotated to new teams every month. You have to be able to work and communicate professionally and still get the job done. Yeah, so it's no use if one person says like, I am the best at building towers, do it my way, and then just tells everyone to shut up, because then you will not score high even though you accomplished the task technically. And then there was, I think, one or two task-based stations where it was actually quite fun. It was like a game. They gave us like, where's Wally? You have to find Wally, and then you have to do some puzzles with, you know, the matchsticks, rearrange the matchsticks to spell a certain word or something. And like count how many beats or whatnot, or like sort the beats in a certain period of time. So it's not about how well you sort those things or how well you complete the task, but how you perform under pressure and under like time pressure, knowing that this is a high stakes interview, but still not letting it affect your performance in the way that you just like, oh no, I can't do anything, you're paralyzed with fear. So I think there was also one role play station where there was a paid actor and we were given a scenario in which our integrity was tested. I think the guy was asking us to lie or something and we just had to say, no, I cannot lie for you. Yeah, so it was pretty straightforward. And what the purpose of all these stations are to assess your soft skills and your character traits more than your competency. So once you figure out like the motive or what they're looking for in each station, then it's easier to figure out what, you know, you have to present as a version of your best self in each station. And of course, last but not least, there's the interview station, which is, you know, similar across all med schools. It's why do you want to be a doctor? And based on your personal statement, they might tease out 2 or 3 points that they want you to elaborate on. So you have to study your personal statement to some extent before the interview, so that you know what you wrote inside, and you're prepared to back it up or elaborate more, and you know, highlight any buzzwords that you know will make the interviewer's eyes open and shine brightly at you. Yeah.
Do you remember anyone who particularly impressed you or particularly you thought was not very pleasant to work with on that day?
Oh, actually, my group was lovely. There were 5 of us, and yeah, we got along well. We supported each other because everyone was suffering from, you know, pre-interview nerves. We were all like only 18 and stressed. Yeah, so we really supported each other. You know, thumbs up in between stations. But unfortunately, I was the only one who got in, so it's a bit sad.
And finally, you know, we circle back to the beginning because we talk so much about the application process, and you know, it's a lot to go through. Some people are very nervous about it. So for a JC student on the fence about their grades, is there a point where it's just not worth applying at all?
Mm, So I'd say, I mean, if you're an undergrad student and you know medicine's really your dream to that extent, I would say just apply regardless of your grades, so that you never live with that what if, like, oh, what if my grades could just have been good enough? Like maybe you have 1 or 2 Bs and you think that you could have made it in through the EBUS, the special admission scheme. Just go for it, and you know, keep your options open. Apply for medicine overseas if you're financially able to as well, or you know, work on your portfolio, come back a few years later into postgraduate medicine if that's what you want. But of course, bear in mind that you know, applying for local medicine for undergraduate comes with a 5-year bond as well, on top of 1 year of housemanship. So you'll be bonded till about 30.
So that was a lot about the application process and what it takes to get in, as well as all the ins and outs. So we'll be talking a little bit more next time about some other things about medical school, right?
We'll be sharing all about medical student life in both undergrad and postgrad medicine. So stay tuned.